Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Deliberately Intentional with me, your host, Remi Fagbohun. Today's episode is titled Marriage Problems, Getting Your Message Across. I paused there because, marriage comes with a lot of problems. I know, I wish it didn't, but I think that inherently, just because we're human beings and we don't really even fully understand ourselves, getting involved or getting into a relationship with someone and invariably getting married to someone, it's going to come with some problems, whether you like it or not. And I don't think we prepare enough for that. So we're starting a whole nother series which covers some of these marriage problems. Today, it's getting your message across. How do you get your message across to the people that are important to you? Now, again, most of my stories come from another story or from a conversation or for something that has been presented to me. In this case, it's something I'm going to use our personal story because this is a recurring theme that has happened many times in many different conversations, many different scenarios. And I'm sure as I tell it, you guys will see how it applies to you. Have you ever realized that, or has it ever happened to you that you've told your husband or your wife or your son or your daughter, your family member, something, and it just seems like you keep repeating yourself over and over and over again, and it just seems like it's not getting through? Yep, that happens in my household too. But you know what I learned? I learned that it's not that they're not listening, it's that I'm not saying it in a way that they can understand. Now, all of us will agree. We're all speaking English or Yoruba or Spanish, whatever language it is that we're speaking. But still, the people aren't quite hearing you. And you end up getting really frustrated. You think that, okay, they don't want to listen, but it's actually not even any of that. It's not that they don't want to listen to you. It's that whatever you're saying isn't resonating or coming through the way you mean it to. How do you resolve that? Well, again, I'm going to come back to a story. Anytime I try to paint a picture to my husband, it's like I'm not doing anything because he is not seeing it, understanding it. Even though I could give it vivid color, he's not understanding anything I am saying. Give him a picture, on the other hand, and say, see, it looks like this, but it's going to be this, this, and this. Maybe I might get some headway. That's part one. Let's see, if I try to talk to him in the middle of the afternoon while he is doing some work, everything I said went in one ear and not the other. How about it probably doesn't even go in his ear at all? He's not hearing any of it. There are times that he is fully dialed in, and there are times that he is completely distracted. He's like a mad scientist sometimes. If he's focused on one thing, if I try talking to him during that period, he's not going to hear anything I'm saying. It took me many, many years to understand this because as far as I'm concerned, if you come back and think about how I am, you could disrupt me in the middle of this podcast and I would pause, have the conversation with you and come right back to what I'm doing. Or I could be on a phone call, I could have a conversation with another person, I can answer an email and I come right back to the conversation. And because I'm like that, for many years I thought everybody was the same without realizing that no, it's not that way. I had to understand him for who he was. Now, granted, you would expect that he should be able to just tell me this, but of course he did not. It took him years for him to realize that, okay, in the morning I need to meditate and I need to do certain things for me to get that, okay, wait, this is not the time to bring up this conversation. And that's what we talk about, picking your moments. Now, but because I finally figured it out with him, it became even easier to figure out my son, who's another person that I have to get my message across to. Both your spouse and your children are probably the one that's going to give you the most frustration if you don't fully understand them. And that's why I say that getting your message across is not the only thing you need to do. You need to understand the person you're trying to get the message across to, and then make your message come to them. After you figure out what message you want to put out there, you now have to craft it in a way that the person that is receiving it will understand it. It has to be on their wavelength or on their level in a way that they get it. Now, because I've understood this about my husband and I understand the different way I learn, now, again, let me go back to me. I can learn from a song. I can learn from a book. I can watch a movie. I can have a conversation. I can imagine a Blank sheet of paper. Give me a blank sheet of paper and I can tell you so many things are going on. If I give my husband a blank sheet of paper, he's going to be like, what am I supposed to do with this? He's not going to automatically come up with a whole picture. He needs to see an example of what it is that I'm talking about for him to get it. Now, because of all of this, part of that I now used when raising Charles. And I put it in such a way that, you know what, I would ask him and I would stretch his mind and I would tell him like, hey, imagine this. I'd give him some examples, but I'd also push him to do certain things so that he's a little bit of me, a lot of himself, and a little bit of his dad. And so he's different. But the only way I was able to get through to him was because I understood his dad. And I understood that, okay, this is what works for your dad. This is also what works for me because I fully understand myself. And then I now figured out a way to get that through to him. So he's like a little mix of both of us, but also a whole lot of himself. But I understand all three. So whatever I'm dealing with for myself, I separate and put in one way. Whatever I'm trying to explain to my husband, another different way. And then whatever I'm doing with Charles, again, different. But it ensures that my message gets across. Their style, whether you like it or not, they call that visual. When you need to see something before you understand it, that's visual. I'm more imaginative, I guess. I'm imaginative, I'm social. I can learn from a conversation. I can sit there in my mind and craft things, but not everybody's like that. You have to understand what makes your spouse different, what makes them them. Then try to find what you can use to get that message through. I'm going to liken this to a conversation I had with my son's very first pediatrician. And he said to me, like, you know, kids are really unique. They'll automatically like certain things like banana. But for you can't feed, a child is not going to grow up on bananas alone. So you're going to have to use that banana and you're going to add banana and meat that doesn't taste that great. Add it to it. He'll eat it because he likes the banana. Keep adding that banana to everything and you will literally get them across so many different food spectrums just because you've added the one thing you know they like to it. So I liken that to communication. For some men, it might be through sex. For some kids, it might be through their video games or for their TV shows. But I literally used to use all of it. I used to watch Teletubbies with my son and what was the other one? Thomas the Tank Engine. And I would use things from whatever episode we watched to make an example for him because I knew he was totally dialed into that episode. I would use something from there like, oh, remember this episode of Thomas when he did this, and this? If I was trying to teach, let's say, about generosity or being kind or not to be a bully or anything, I would always use the TV shows or situations or circumstances that I knew he was already dialed into. I would use it to get my message across. For my husband, I could use a story that he had told me or a movie that he told me he really liked or something he had told me had happened to him and a friend or him and anybody. I would use that to get through. And of course, sex too, but that's neither here nor there. You have to know how to get your message across to your spouse. Men do it. It's flattery. It's a lot of flattery. Stroke the ego. Most women don't know how to do that. Most men don't even know how to handle their wives. You feel like you need to shout at them, use fear. I prefer to use love. Love is never ending. Fear, you will outgrow. They tried to use fear on me. After a certain point in time, you get rebellious. Fear will not get you anything. Forcing somebody is also not going to get you anywhere. But when they want to do something, sky's the limit. Understanding anybody's learning style is key to understanding them and to your message getting through to them. If you take anything away from today's conversation, it should be that you can get through to anybody if you understand how they learn. I'm very intentional about making sure that I get through to people. In some ways, I'm still learning, especially in this whole podcast arena. I'm still learning how to make my message even clearer. But in regards to my family, that one I've got unlocked because I know absolutely 100% how to get them to see my point of view, and they know how to get their point of view to me too. Thank you again, everyone, for tuning into another episode of Deliberately Intentional with me. Thank you, my producer, Marv, for your help and your assistance in all things podcast world. You can tune in every Wednesday, as you usually do, to catch me on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. See you next week. Thanks, everyone.